pleasure, or fun isn't always the best or the healthiest choice. Suffering is not always the bad route. The Lord said in the book of the Proverbs, chapter 3, "For the Lord disciplines him whom he loves. As a father, he chastens the son in whom he delights." The sufferings of the Canaanite woman, witnessing the cruel demon tormenting her daughter, is the reason that she came closer to Jesus Christ. That's the reason she came looking for him, begging him. That's why she encountered him. Otherwise, if her daughter were not in suffering, she would not have reached out to Jesus. Both of them would have continued to live in the same way they lived. All sufferings are caused by the enjoyment of some unlawful pleasure, whether physical pleasure, mental pleasure, spiritual pleasure, or emotional pleasure. All sufferings. Suffering is intended to pay off our debts that we accumulate because we choose sin. We accumulate those debts through the enjoyment of ungodly pleasure. And the currency to pay back those debts is suffering. Pain and suffering are God's merciful medicine to correct and to heal mankind. Pain is God's way for us to stop the consumption of unnatural pleasure that leads man to death, so that it can drive the desire for this unlawful pleasure. Suffering paves the way for healing through the divine grace, through the power of the divine grace that comes into our souls to destroy the deadly consequences of the sinful pleasures that we mingled ourselves with or we chose. After the fall of man, without suffering, it would have been impossible for man to choose virtues freely and to abide by the law of God. The sin that came into the world destroyed that ability. This girl that we hear about in the story of the woman, the Canaanite woman, the girl was healed in a miraculous way. This girl, because of the location of she was and the name that she was described, we know that she was a pagan that lived in a pagan way in violation of God's law, breaking his will. In today's terminology, she would be someone that would advocate for a style of life that is against the teaching of the gospel. This would be the equivalent of that girl in our today's society. Her illness would be diagnosed or called some mental or psychological disorder. So, significant number of people today, just like her, they are suffering because of their involvement in practicing unlawful form of pleasure. And that also would apply for Christians who disregard the teaching of the gospel and the will of God, and they go along with that style of life. The example of the Canaanite woman gives us a roadmap how to be delivered from our sufferings. The roadmap is very simple: by crying out to Jesus Christ with persistence, saying, "Have mercy on me, O Lord." The Canaanite woman is really a great example for us. She cried out to him even when he did not respond to her request. Even when he ignored her, she kept on reaching out. And even when he seemed not to want to grant her request, she kept on asking and pleading for mercy. Let all of us that suffer, whatever the suffering is, whether Christians or non-Christians, learn how to beg Jesus Christ for mercy even more when we feel that our request is being ignored by Him.